Hi, episode 2 of year 3 of trying to get double bodyweight squat, now into my mid 40s. So this is the early parts of the new year. So I'd finished off last season quite well. Got into the Easter break and knew that was a bit of a disruption to training. Well, that disruption, unfortunately, has kind of continued a little bit. So effectively, the first week back after having a fortnight off, I know that detraining happens to me quite rapidly. That's one of the joys of being mid-40s, or the additional challenge that someone in mid-40s faces compared to, say, in the early 20s, when you might miss a couple of weeks and it doesn't necessarily knock you back quite so much. Well, what happened over the last kind of week is a flu bug, basically been off poorly for 4 or 5 days. So just started to build back into that work capacity, get back into training a little bit, and then being wiped out for 4 or 5 days. So I've kind of having to starting again, which is okay. It's the way of the world. You can't stay illness free forever. But yeah, back feeling much better now, thank God. But laid up for 3, 4, 5 days, and those with family and young kids know that actually the recovery is a lot harder, because not only do you get it and you are out of sorts for a while, but obviously your family are going to get it and you're looking after them, so your recovery gets longer because you just don't get time to invest in you getting better. You're kind of looking after everybody else as well. So it is what it is, and yeah, got back into it this week, but as a consequence of that, I'm just gone energy wise. Feel great, but like in terms of work capacity, getting work done, not the greatest. So what's that kind of happened? What's happened to data? What's happened to kind of numbers wise? Well, I kind of left last year on an upward trend, got to 100 kilos, and the numbers were starting to show me I was going to get better, looking promising. I've stayed at 100 kilos in terms of doing 20 squats. And my goal, I'm going to move to 14 reps very soon, I hope it's soon. But we're going to get to 0.6 meters per second as an average. As you can see, I kind of keep bouncing around in the low 0.5 kind of range, so between 0.48 and 0.56. And again, I'm just not getting a bit of 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions consecutively to show myself getting better. Actually, what you can see from this particular chart here is that actually on the right hand side was yesterday's data, much more variable. You can see these kind of the two worst performances, the 0.48 at the 0.5. The best isn't that bad, but they drop into these low velocity ranges. The difference between a bit best and worst is quite pronounced. But when I'm getting better, actually there's a relatively small gap between best rep and worst rep, and that's kind of a big kind of, you just fatigue much more quickly, much more severely. But I'm it's not unsurprising. Like, I'm not going in thinking I'm going to do like 0.63 and then I'm hitting 0.5 and like wondering why on earth that has happened. It is where I am. And that's really kind of easily explained if I look at some body composition stuff. So I don't often put this out there, but that's kind of where I am today. So the girth segment stuff is relatively stable, hasn't really changed very much, but I went from being at around about 95 kilos for like 2 weeks in a row, and I dropped down to 93.4 within actually the space of 3 days. So lost, we'll call it 2 kilos for sake of clarity, 2 kilos in the space of 3 to 4 days. That doesn't do you a lot of favours. It's like a lot of weight loss people out there going, I'd love that. And don't get me wrong, there's losing a little bit of weight is not a bad thing for me. But in terms of like physical performance, that kind of rapid weight loss through illness does not make you better. It only makes you worse. So I kind of that is where I am. So that's where I've gotten to this week. Just trying getting back into now that consistent training pattern. After effectively 4 weeks now of disrupted training, building back into that consistency again that I had just before Easter. So that's where I'm going to be, and hopefully I'll move past into the hundreds and then dip into 14s and I start to do less reps and more weight. Yeah, so hopefully next week I can actually talk about progress rather than regressions.